Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. Before we dive into this powerful episode, please remember to subscribe to our channels and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes to continue hustling. This episode is sponsored by Align Life, Brain-Based Health Solutions, Chiro HD, Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, German College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, Life Chiropractic College West, Pro Hockey Chiros, Pro Baseball Chiros, the IFCO, and 100% Chiropractic. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 571 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I'm your producer, Luke Millette, and here's your host, James Jester.
So today we have the opportunity of interviewing Dr. John McAtamney. And if you want to hear a story about believing in what you do and understanding that you'll never walk alone in chiropractic, stay tuned. Welcome back. This is another episode of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I have Dr. John McAtamney today, coming in from the New York area. I don't want to get so specific because he told me where he lives, and I'm like, yeah, that's New York. And he's like, no, it's not. So I'll let him tell you about his story, but I want to let you know the big why. Why do we do what we do over here at Chiro Hustle? Well, first things first is freedom of speech. We stand by that within sharing these messages of chiropractic and documenting them, and creating a depository that's never been done before, and documenting the past 6 years with over 1,200 interviews, this being episode 571 of this podcast. This message matters a lot to me. So keeping freedom of speech alive and well is something that we believe in. Next thing is medical freedom and family health freedom. And I know Dr. John, being a pediatric chiropractor, family health matters a lot. With his political stance in the chiropractic profession, medical freedom matters a whole lot. And having the ability to make those choices for us and our family are not the same thing, but they should both be understood. And then we roll into a bit more philosophical approach to chiropractic. And those are big ideas like BJ Palmer's. And his last words were the sacred trust. If you don't know what that is, go and find out what BJ Palmer's last words were. You're going to learn more about chiropractic than you previously knew. I guarantee you. I don't care if you've been a chiropractor for 30 years, go read it again. And then we do support subluxation-based chiropractic. I know it's kind of crazy I have to mention that, but it's true. There's groups out there that are talking that subluxation doesn't exist. Big mistake. And we do believe in subluxation when it comes to correcting the vertebral subluxation, that when you adjust somebody, it connects the physical to the spiritual, and that's innate intelligence and universal intelligence. And that's our intro. And Dr. Mac, as you said, your colleagues call you because McAtamney is a challenging thing to say. I said, it sounds like we're going somewhere together. So welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thank you very much.
Your story, I read it. It was health challenge. Somebody says, go see the doctor with magic hands. The next thing you know, you're changing from veterinarian path to chiropractic path.
That's correct, sir.
Let's share that story with people, and let's anchor with that and go to where we are today.
All right. Well, background, I'm a child of Irish immigrants. We didn't really know what chiropractic was. This is probably the late 70s when they were still known as quacks. And my story is real simple. I was sick for longer than a week. And my parents didn't trust the medical health system at the time because they wanted to put me in a hospital. And that didn't make sense to my parents. And somebody said to see this guy. And we didn't know what it was or anything. And my story was real simple. He looked at me and said, "You're unwell." And I was a sarcastic 15-year-old, and I thought he was just commented about how astute he was. But anyway, he worked on me for about 20 minutes. He was an AK doc, did a whole bunch of different things. And I got on the table as one person, and I got off the table as another person. Everything that I brought to the table, I left behind. the sneezes, the coughs, the nausea, the chills, the body fevers, the aches. Uh, a week and a half of antibiotics and all sorts of pills, potions, and lotions that didn't give me the results that they were promising. And some guy that I didn't understand what the heck he was doing. And then a half an hour later, I was a different person. My story is important because it's one of the things that sort of drove me into what I'm doing, because at the time I was wanted to be a veterinarian, and I said, okay, we're going to do this instead. And then man plans and God laughs. And, I was working construction, making a whole lot of money. And I had another come to the profession. I believe everybody's called, and I got called twice. I had another history where I had a case of the hives, and I called up the chiropractor I was seeing, and he said, what do you mean you're not coming in? I said, well, I got the hives. I'm not going to travel, because he was in the city, which is about half an hour, 45 minutes away. And he says, well, you can come to my office. I'm going to come to your house. So I put on some clothes that I could tolerate, because I had hives all over my whole body. And he was an upper cervical doc. He worked on me 3 times in 3 hours after checking me with a stomach. And he was happy with the way things went after the third adjustment. And then he made some nutritional recommendations, which in my histamine haze, I took incorrectly and doubled the dose. Had a Herkheimer's reaction, slept for 15 hours, peeled my skin like I was stepping out of it the next day, and never had the hive since. In chiropractic, we call that retracing to a certain degree, where we have to experience the whole thing that made us ill in the first place. And when I called to tell him my miracle, he said to me, well, why haven't you submitted your application to chiropractic school yet? So I tell those stories because the import was I get into chiropractic because of 2 massive changes in my physiology as a result of care that had to do with my immune response. But a couple of years ago, they told us we weren't allowed to talk about immune responses in chiropractic. I did not comply. And I didn't advertise it, and I don't talk about it as a cure. My whole thing is that the body works better when it's clear.
Amen. That's some chiropractic gospel right there. The body functions better when it's clear. There was one line that really stuck out to me. I believe if we love what we do, we work to protect it. It's like a one-liner on your bio that you gave me.
Yeah. Well, I was not in practice that long, and I had a group of friends / mentors, and I got involved at a very early level in the politics in the state, along with the New York Chiropractic Council. And I started out as a grunt, a soldier, and you just learn to say yes. And when you say yes, you get pulled along. Life takes you on a journey. And I basically worked my way up through the entire organization, holding all the positions I wanted and all the positions I didn't want. When I was pushed to take over the presidency, I said, no, I can't do that because I have a wife that I don't want to divorce. I want to be able to go home and see my kids. And if you take that job, you don't see your family. So, but I was on the board for 16 plus years, and gave it all I had, and went to the well a number of times. And it was a life-changing experience. It affected how I practice. It affected my ability to understand things beyond what the average chiropractor sees, because I saw things happening in the halls of government that the average person doesn't see, and I was aware of information that the average person doesn't see. And that level of service was sort of bred into me. So, I continue to do other things. Like for the last 6 or 7 years, I've been running a Band of Brothers. Band of Brothers is a program that went from meeting on a monthly basis to meets every 2 weeks. It's a Zoom call. I facilitate it. We have chiropractors from all over the country. Jim yourself has been on the call, and it's a way of reminding people that they need to stay dipped. They need to stay connected to what brought them in, why they're doing what they're doing. Because if you're in the office every day and you're just pounding beef, as Patch and Temple talked about, you can sometimes get disconnected for what you're doing and why you're doing it. And you can go to programs like DE or New Beginnings or some of the other ones that are out there, but going on a quarterly basis is not enough. Too many chiropractors are separated from each other by miles and miles and miles. In Long Island here in Nassau County, there's 600 chiropractors. In Suffolk County, there's another 600. So within a 50-mile radius, I have 1,200 chiropractors around me. I've talked to people that are in Indiana, and the next chiropractor is 45 miles away. So that sense of community, I learned a long time ago that I can break a pencil, but if I put 7 or 8 together, I can't break them. So there's strength in numbers, and many hands make light work. So the idea is that we have a number of people working together in the same direction, doing the same thing with the same effort. We can actually get some things done. And everything I do, whether it's when I was involved in politics or the Band of Brothers or this other program I'm involved in, which we'll talk about, it's really about serving the greater good, because what else are we supposed to do? Think about what we get to do with our hands. We change people's lives. We change their families' lives. We give people back hope. But if they don't have anything to use that hope on, or they don't have any direction to bring that hope into alignment with what they want, what have we really done? So there's other things that can be done for the chiropractor and also for our patients that we serve, that give them a sense of community and to give them a sense of belonging, that now that they have this awareness that the body heals itself and that things are possible, and there's this amazing thing called innate intelligence that allows the life to express itself. They don't have to live a certain way. Barge talked about a life without fear. When COVID hit, life without fear was basically how I lived, because I knew that it wasn't going to beat us. But too many people were afraid. But I was able to touch the people, and they were understanding what I was talking about, and I took away their fear and I gave them hope. And I hear stories of people who, I know somebody who has been inside for the last 5 years and hasn't come out because they're still afraid. I find that to be catastrophically sad.
Woof. Yeah. So your story, we transcended into what's happened over the past going on 4 years now, and how people have responded to it. And one of the things that I know that you did is created a program called BeTheCrash.org.
I didn't create it. I am the chief informational officer. This was somebody else's brainchild, who I'm lucky to call colleague and friend. Be the Crash. Basically, CRASH stands for Citizens Revolting Against Standardized Healthcare. We have sat down with some people that have the ability to help us understand our marketplace, and we're rebranding to something called Freedoms Unions. And it's really simple. It's about liberty and justice and freedom for you to make the choices regarding your healthcare, your ability to choose the food you eat, choose how you travel, all these things that have been slowly been trying to take away from us. It's going to happen again. This is not a one-time thing. They're going to try this again. There'll be another shutdown at some point, and we need to be ready for what's going on. Freedoms Unions is a very simple idea. When it rains outside, you put up an umbrella. When things got really tough in the 40s and 50s, they unionized to fight against the robber barons. Big Pharma is our robber barons. We need to organize our workers. We need to organize and put together those groups that are in the same playground, the same sandbox as us chiropractors. And I think we understand things in a way that they don't. So we have this idea that Freedoms Union is a place where this group and that group, I'm not going to name any groups, but all of the different groups have their own sandbox, and they have their own monetary, and they have their own member list, instead of being a single group trying to represent itself against Big Pharma in the halls of government, where they only have 635 members and they only have $12 million in the bank. Freedoms Union is a place where they all come together, and now when they go, because they're a member of Freedoms Unions, they have 25 million members and they have $12.5 million in the bank. So it is a matter of changing the currency, which is power and money, power being votes, so that when people bring an idea to government needs to listen to us, and we're not so easily attacked because we're single. One of the things I saw as a chiropractor was when we couldn't get our aces all lined up in New York State, where there was 2 organizations, we would bring ideas to Albany, and we would be dismissed and said, "Go get yourself figured out. We're not gonna entitle 2 bills." So we had to put a joint legislative task force together, where this organization and my organization got together and said, "Okay, this is the issues we're going to work on. These are the bills we're going to support." And then we brought those issues and those bills back to Albany, and the legislators said, "Oh, you have one voice now?" And we were like, "Yes," and that's how things started to happen. Uh, you know, singleness of purpose, unified voice, dialogue. Those are the things that are going to make a change. You cannot do the idea of standing on a hill and waving a flag and making noise. That might have worked years ago. It doesn't work anymore. Bottom line is we have to be very, very clear about what we're doing, who we're connecting to, and continually look at moving forward. It's a game of chess now. It's no longer checkers. We have to really think 3 or 4 or 5, 6 moves ahead. So there's a lot happening. There's a lot of players on the field, and Freedoms Union is a way of sort of putting everybody on the same page so that we have a unified field. Because big pharma and big agriculture, the money that they're spending, we have a big uphill fight.
Yeah. Well, how do people get plugged into one of these Freedom Health unions?
Well, it's real simple. We're reworking the website, so you can go bethecrash.org, and it'll bring you to the new website. And I believe it's going to be $19 for an individual for a year, and I think it's $39 for a family, and $39 for an organization. So it's based upon low monetary costs. We're not looking to make money on this, but basically, you become a member of Freedoms Unions, and then the groups that belong, they become members of Freedoms Unions. And the idea is to sort of geometrically grow the membership so that when somebody turns around and goes to Albany and says, "We're not going to do what you ask, and here's why," when they turn around and ask us why, who do we think we are, we can turn around and say, "Well, we have 20 million members, and we have $40 million in the bank, and we're not pushing it, but we're asking you in dialogue to pay attention to what we're telling us." So it's about changing the rules and playing a bigger game.
Well, the scorecard needs to go state to state. And I think what you're doing is really inspiring. And we talked about like understanding the blessing of this profession and what it is for reciprocity. And I think what you said earlier, like becoming a member of your state association and coming in to represent it and to take the positions that are available and to keep serving. And one of the things I always learned when I was younger, growing up, it's kind of cliche to say, but 9/10 of it is showing up, and the other part has to be desire. And
Well, the interesting part is 9/10 of it is showing up, but your presence in the room changes the conversation. So just by being there,
yeah,
this happened because the mastermind that's created because you showed up changes how things are done, changes the dialogues. We have no idea how far we think, say, or do will affect the lives of millions tomorrow. But the requirement is we have to think, say, or do something.
yeah. And one of the words that I highlighted and underlined in your bio was psychoneurolinguistics. And the words
Words
that we
have power.
say, yeah.
Words have power.
I just think it's fascinating, like how we can critically think if we all work together, things will be easier to accomplish. And I can tell you, I've been to like major state associations recently, and they think that they live in a silo. Like they're the only state that exists.
I've
And
seen that.
and I know that, you talking about being a dual card holder, the ICA and the IFCO, like you can contribute and you can support more than one international organization.
Well, it's real
You can,
simple. Like, you have to know what you stand for, and then you have an obligation to give of your time, talent, and treasure. And I'm at that stage where I give my time, I'll give more treasure than time. If that group or organization represents what you stand for, and they're going to fight for you and fight for what you believe in. You don't have to belong to just one. I wear an ICA member thing. I'm an ICA member. I've been here since I was in school. You can belong to both. Membership in one does not exclude the membership in the other. They're both fighting the same fight, but they're fighting in different arenas. And we need to basically support those groups that support us. Ayn Rand said that the height of immorality is to support something that creates your own destruction. So bottom line is, if you can, with what you have available, support your local state organization, get on your state board, pay attention to the national organizations. There's stuff happening all around the world. Look what happened in Australia, where they wanted to take away pediatric care. Look what happened in Canada, where they wanted to take away your ability to do certain other techniques.
And X-ray.
It's happening in other countries. It's going to happen here if we don't pay attention.
Yeah. Yeah, the game's always on. You know, one of my favorite quotes of all time is Bob Marley. He said, the bad guys never take a day off, so why should I?
I remember that from Bob.
And when you think about chiropractic, we can't take a day off and we can't get comfortable because it's always a full court press. There's always more to do because we need more unity, like you're saying. You know, I gave a talk years ago in Boulder for the Mile High group, and it was called Unity Through Diversity. And I talked about how every chiropractor does something a little bit different because you're artists. Like the artistic adjustment is the art, the analysis, the detection, and the correction. Like it's all art. Like it's how do you interpret this with somebody that comes into your clinic? Well, everybody does it a little different. Doesn't matter if you follow the same management company, you do it different.
But the goal is the same.
The goal is the same. To correct a vertebral subluxation and to talk to people about the big idea and tell the story of chiropractic. And I think that as we develop this more and more and more and more, there is a huge unity through diversity. And I think that's something we should lean into rather than exclude from. And that's where we could be on a bigger landscape when it comes to the heads of state, not just the executive directors at these state organizations because they're not chiropractors, but the people that are on those boards should be like, I don't know, for lack of a better term, like the Warriors, that old movie. Like we should have like the Warriors all coming together of chiropractic for a common theme, which is to make chiropractic better and to unify greater. And that's really something I wanted to, wrap up with you today, is because that's something that you're a part of. That's something you've been like, you're geared for this, bro.
Dude, it's real simple. What you just described, we've had this conversation in New York with regard to unity. And a lot of it comes down to a misunderstanding of our basic principles. The United States is a republic. It is a conglomeration of different states with different wealths and different powers and different autonomies that have decided to band together to form the United States of America as a republic, which means that no one state is more important than the other. And the unity through diversity is a key element of that, because that's what a republic would stand for, where this idea of democracy being the majority rule, well, 51% is a majority. That is not unity through diversity. That is, you will vote with me or I will cancel you. So there's a whole misunderstanding of politics in this process, and really what needs to come out of it. And, what about somebody who does just network? Are they allowed to practice? What about someone who does applied kinesiology? Are they allowed to practice if they don't move the bone? What is it that defines what chiropractic is, and what is it? Who is somebody else to define and to determine what another person does? You started off saying that each of us is an artist, but there doesn't seem to be any respect for the art, because if you don't practice like me or you don't follow these guidelines, then you shouldn't be allowed to practice. And there's some danger in that, because there's judgment involved, and there's this idea that uniformity is the only way. No, not unity through diversity. It's uniformity, and there's a big problem with that.
You made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. This episode is sponsored by Align Life, Brain-Based Health Solutions, Chiro HD, Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, German College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, Life Chiropractic College West, Pro Hockey Chiros, Pro Baseball Chiros, the IFCO, and 100% Chiropractic. Let's hustle. Yeah.
So I applaud you for working on unity through diversity, because that's the answer. Uniformity is not the answer.
Yeah. And, you know, you're mentioning earlier about this quote from Bill Esteb with no fear. And, you know, I've had another revelation since 5 or 6 years ago, speaking at that Mile High group. And I went back, and it was this year. And I gave a talk about our big why. Why do we do what we do at Chiro Hustle? And I was talking about freedom of speech. I was talking about medical freedom, subluxation-based chiropractic, all the things that I pack into that first 2 minutes. I extrapolated that and talked about it. And I actually got a chance to share the same room and same stage with Bill Esteb. So I think that the more that we do, the greater that we become, the more connected that we are, and the more that we're willing to tell the chiropractic story and stand in that gap, whether it's popular or not, it's something that will leave a legacy for chiropractic.
Well, that simple quote from Bill that says everything you want's on the other side of fear.
Yeah.
And I want to applaud you because you've been fearless in what you do. Doing this particular Chiro Hustle podcast, you're putting a lot out there. But I learned a long time ago that a magnet has an attractive end and a repulsive end, and you have to be willing to put up with the naysayers. But I take my hat off to you, young man. You're doing a really good job, and I want you to keep doing what you're doing because you're a voice for those crying in the wilderness.
You know, for me, it was we have to. Like how you jumped into those political positions. Like I felt like if we didn't do this and start doing this 6 years ago, there'd be a huge gap in information for chiropractic. And
Amen.
because of it, I feel like we've created a depository of powerful stories coming from that of the practitioner, and that no one can ever come in and manipulate those stories because they're historically documented. And it doesn't matter who wants to come in and be like the next, you know, policymaker for a chiropractic future. You can't, because it's established already.
I have been I've been consuming your Chiro Hustle podcast since you started. And I've listened to many of the stories you documented. And you're exactly right. That idea that we have this auditory composite of really what's going on and who stood for what and why things are being done. And there's too much rewriting the story, and that's something that what you have together is going to help to tell the truth.
Yeah. So I did want to talk about, you know, influences. And I know that you mentioned in your write up to me was Sigafus was one of your influences. And I know that there's a lot of chiropractors out there that have heard of who James Sigafus is. Who was he to you?
I was lucky enough to spend time with Dr. Sigafus at New Beginnings when he was coming there on a constant basis. And his ability to share the principle in a humorous but impactful manner, he helped me to understand a lot of what I didn't understand about the profession. And he helped me to understand that it doesn't matter if people laugh at you. You know, there's a saying that he used to use, said, me and God are a majority, you know? So if you're doing the right thing and you're doing what God put you here for, then it doesn't really matter what anybody else says. And I think you have to have influence on yourself first. And that's what he taught me. It was also his humanity. I had the the opportunity. Was one of the people that got to ask him. It was an anything goes question. And I asked him what I thought was going to be an insightful question. I said, Doc, if you could roll the clock back 50 years, how would you spend the day? And he scrunched up his face, twisted up his nose, and said, if I was 50 years younger for one day, I'd find the biggest guy I could and punch him in the mouth. I'd love a good fist fight. And it was not the response we were expecting, but it taught us about his humanity and the fact that it's okay to be human as a chiropractor. You're going to cry and you're going to get angry and you're going to be happy and you're going to have bad days and good days, but it doesn't define who you are. So
wow, that's not what I expected to hear. And I think that the rough and tumble approach, like we have to respect the flinch. like
Yep.
like people have dropped their respect of like a flinch. Like nobody has like a flinch response to anything anymore. So it is important to say, hey, if you get near me and I growl, be careful because I can bite too. And I think that we're at a place in history where it's not okay to growl and it's not okay to say, hey, you better flinch because I'm real. And I think that we need to get back to that humanity part of saying, look, there's danger in not telling the truth. There's danger in misleading people. There's danger in following a narrative that isn't true.
well, it's interesting. One of the things that he taught me, and I discovered it in the green books. Why do people think that the status quo is maintained if the subluxation is not removed? The subluxation is not removed. That's not status quo. That is a momentum of dis-ease. You're going to continue to get worse. You're going to approach death faster because your body's going to continue to break down at an accelerated rate. So it's not a matter of just leaving it alone.
Chiropractic
When that concept came across my view screen, it took a while to take it in, but he basically taught me that you don't have any choice. If you leave it alone, it's going to continue to get worse. It doesn't stay the same.
And that's why the big message today for me is chiropractic creates adaptability. And when people are under regular care, they adapt to life better. Whether it was your miracle story that you opened up with about the hives or about, being sick for multiple days and getting your first adjustment, there's a lot that we can unpack with that. But there's a lot that it gives people the hope is that
It's all about life expression and adaptability, my friend.
Yes. Well, I want to close out. You mentioned new beginnings and dynamic essentials today. What are those groups and why do you go to those gatherings?
DE and New Beginnings are two groups on the East Coast. There's other ones, Mile High and the like, right? But these are groups that basically have made it their mission to guard the sacred trust. You can go learn technique places and you can go learn the science places. They created a place where you can learn the philosophy. And I think the power of them, it's not a one-off. It's like you can't go get one adjustment and be perfect. Going to New Beginnings or DE on a consistent basis changes you. And the most important thing that comes of it is that you learn to think like a chiropractor. You learn about deductive reasoning. You learn to ask different questions. You learn to see the world with different eyes. We talk about living in a chiropractic world. The level of mentorship, bonding, brotherhood, family. Very clearly, I don't ever feel alone because I've been part of these groups, and if there was somebody if I needed help, I know a dozen people I could reach out and ask for help. That's the power, because what are we supposed to do? Well, we're here to basically adjust people and empower them and allow their nervous system, but we're here as people to build relationship. That's why we came down here. It's about relationship, and New Beginnings and DE. I use those because those are the ones that are most in my consciousness, but those are the heart of chiropractic. That basically is you learn to think like a chiropractor. You become a chiropractor. You're not a pseudo-medical doctor. You're not a manual manipulator. You're a chiropractor. And you need to learn to think like a chiropractor. And chiropractors think differently than the average person. They think differently than other doctors because our foundation is we have a different way of looking at the world and a different philosophical understanding. And we have a different science. And we need to have an understanding of what that is to be able to truly be a chiropractor. So those particular groups, that's what they do for me.
Well, before I even knew that they existed, ever, 15 years ago when I started in this profession as a traction tech, helping people with curve correction and chiropractic biophysics offices, I learned something. And that we need to connect community for this profession. And people need to feel a part of something so they don't feel like they're on an island by themselves. And I've been to both those groups. And what I've come to realize is that we need unity through diversity, and we need people to build community. And Liverpool has a saying, they're a soccer club out of London area, and they say, "You'll never walk alone." And I love that you have such a resonance with these groups. And I think that people need to get plugged into them, because the thing I pull away from the most is it's okay to be passionate about what you do. It's okay to hug people. It's okay to shed a couple tears. And chiropractors do operate on a different operating system. You're right. One of belief and faith and truth. And I believe that that's what makes chiropractic so unique. And everybody wants to, that isn't in chiropractic, they're subluxated and they want to change it, and they want to take parts of it and make it their own, where those groups will never allow that. And chiropractic will always live on, whether it's with that resonance or some subcategory chiropractic profession that's created outside of that belief group, those groups. But we do have to protect the sacred trust, and that's why I open with that. And
Absolutely.
I think that the more that chiropractors go dig that up and look at what BJ Palmer's last words were, their resonance of their own profession will shift. So that's why I always encourage people to go find BJ Palmer Sacred Trust at the opener, because I think it's so important that they know more than the big idea. You know, like the big idea is important, but they have to start to understand why it's important to support subluxation chiropractic, why it's important to support innate intelligence and universal intelligence. And that's really the anchor that I start with. So people, even if they've only listened to the first 2 minutes, they'll know that we're serious and that we're doing something that matters. And I think that stories do matter. And I think by you telling your story today, it was really helpful to our audience to know that just keep doing the right thing and you'll never walk alone.
Amen, my man.
Is there anything I didn't ask you today that you'd like to share with our audience?
Real simple. This is to the students. You're fully equipped. You don't need anything else. You just have to remember that commencement is to begin. It doesn't mean you're finished. To the practicing chiropractor, you can't walk alone. Find a community. Meet and break bread with your brothers and sisters. Monthly, get together with somebody down the street, down in another town. Start building community, start building relationships. You're not alone. That's why social media and making connections there at least is a place to start. Because what we get to do is change the world. It's not about back pain or neck pain. It's about holding a young baby or helping a pregnant mom. Everything changes because you put your hands on someone. Believe in what you do. Study what you do. Learn your science. Learn your technique. Understand your philosophy. Sit on a well-balanced and strong stool with 3 legs.
Dr. Mack, if people want to reach out to you or learn more about you, where can we send them to?
Real simple. My last name, Dr. McAtamney at Gmail is my easy email address. If they look up drmcAtamney.com, that's my website. They can get me there.
There we have it.
Pretty easy to find.
Dr.
I have a pretty strong
McAtamney.com.
I have a pretty strong social web presence. So,
well, great. I really appreciate you being episode 571 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. It was a divine meeting.
It was my honor, Jim. It was really good to see you. And I look forward to the next time we get together.
Next time I'm in New York, I'll definitely drop you a line and see if we can't get together and get a slice.
Give me a shout. We'll get a slice or a nice steak or something. I'm easy. I can hang anytime. And I know you're keeping clean, so I'll walk with you that way too.
Well, great, man. Thanks for being our guest today. And I'm going to close out by telling everybody you're just one story away. Keep hustling. I'll see you guys on the next episode. We'll see you soon, John.
Pretty cool, man.
All right. Bye. Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.